I wanted to just ask you maybe to expand a little bit on something you were quoted on recently in The Guardian, where you said that the attribution models we have for the impact of climate change on extreme weather events are intrinsically conservative. That's been my sense too, but I'm not sure everyone understands why that's the case. So could we start there?
Sure. There are a number of reasons one can argue that these attribution exercises are overly conservative. Some of them have to do with the nuances of sort of the statistical testing approaches and how you deal with the so-called null hypothesis. In other words, what standard of evidence you need to reject the assumption that there is no impact. And so there's some debate about whether the approaches, the statistical approaches used are too conservative, basically, in how much evidence you need to reject the so-called null hypothesis that there's no effect. My concerns actually have to do more with the physics of what's involved with many of these extreme weather events. And in particular, research that we have been doing with other scientists, looking at how climate change is impacting the behavior of the jet stream and impacting the jet stream in a way that actually leads to these sort of stalled weather patterns that we've seen, where you get a high pressure area or a low pressure area that just sits in the same location day after day, rather than getting moved along by the jet stream. And when that happens, when the same region is under a low pressure system for day after day, that's when you get record flooding. That's when you get day after day of rainfall. When you have an area that's persistently under a high pressure system day after day, that's where the ground continues to be baked. You get unusually warm temperatures, you get drought, extreme drought. So the models, as it turns out, do not do a very good job in describing those connections, how climate change may be impacting the jet stream in a way that leads to these stalled extreme weather patterns. And what that means is that these attribution exercises, which rely upon the models to be able to reproduce the real world phenomena underlying these extremes, the models may not be up to that task. And so for that reason in particular, I think that the model attribution exercises that you hear reported on so frequently in the media are underestimating the impact that climate change is having on these extreme weather events.
So Jessica, so we know that July in Germany was the warmest month since records began. And any one of us in Europe, we have been feeling the heat. Tell us what's going on where you are.
Shouldn't be here. In fact, even in a usually warm summer, where I'm standing would be underwater, a sign of just how much the Rhine River here is receding. In fact, the water level of the Rhine is usually somewhere between 3 and 4 meters. Yesterday, the water level went down to 1 meter 35. And this is a huge concern here. It's obviously a big concern for the environment. Fish are finding it very hard to survive in very low levels of increasingly warm water. They're not getting enough oxygen. In fact, piles of dead fish have been found along the stretch of over the 764 miles that the Rhine stretches. So a big concerns here about what this means, and of course with no real relief in sight as this hot weather looks set to continue and the Rhine looks set to recede even further.
All right, and what's being done to help, people to deal with the heat?
Well, the government in Berlin is waiting until the end of the season to assess how much damage has been done to the environment. That is when they will also agree on the amount of compensation that can be given to farmers for lost crops. But certainly authorities around the country in areas where temperatures have been reaching the high 30s are struggling to provide water and resources for local people. Some places there's been water shortages, but of course authorities providing a lot of advice for people on how to stay cool. And in many areas the fire services have had to be on standby as earth and forests are becoming increasingly dry. In fact, in a city near here, Bochum, the fire services were used recently to refill lakes and rivers in order to keep the fish alive with a constant flow of cool water.
Freshwater fish are suffocating in rivers across Europe during the heat wave. In West Germany, where temperatures have reached around 39 degrees Celsius, there's hardly been any rain in the last few months, leaving the Rhine River in Cologne very low. This environmentalist says the extreme temperature is not great for the ecosystem. Lots of organisms will die out. You will see lots of dead fish and other creatures in the Rhine, shellfish for example. When it eventually rains again, they'll be able to recolonize. But for the creatures living in the Rhine at the moment, this is an absolute catastrophe. Fossil energy plants have reduced their production in Germany because they use water from rivers to cool their systems and send back the hot water to the river. And ships have load restrictions because of the low water levels. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight, as temperatures will be around 30 degrees for the next week in western Germany.
With an almost rain-free July following the driest June since 1925, Britain is sweating its way through both heatwave and drought.
At the moment, all the news we're hearing about lack of rainfall, speculation about shortages.
It's not a local sort of northern European or British issue this time. It seems to be the whole of the northern hemisphere. I'm reading and hearing reports from the US, Canada, Russia, Sweden about long periods of high temperatures, drought conditions, and it's affecting harvests everywhere.
Farmer Robert Law takes me on a tour of his parched land. Wheat prices are way up. That's good for farmers, but bad, of course, for consumers. He's worried about his livestock. So your big concern now is the grass that you have lost effectively that would have been feed for your livestock?
Oh, absolutely, and it's got to the situation in the last few days that we've actually had to get feed in and bring it out to the field.
The National Farmers Union has called it a crisis.
We have our food on our shelves 24/7, and we often don't actually ever really think about where food comes from or indeed how it gets on those shelves. So I think it's a wake-up call in many areas, and not least around the situation of market failure and volatility, which are crucial components of a future agricultural policy.
Esta casa atrás de nós é a sua casa. E receia que...
Epá, agora aqui é limpei, ninguém limpa nada, isto é uma camada de coisa. É limpei, agora, uma faísca, uma coisa qualquer, um gajo tem atenção para pagar. Só se lembram disto nesta altura? Epá, na praia.
Os bombeiros pediram
as pessoas os bombeiros também não dão feito até que é que se vai meter além.
Mas os bombeiros pediram-no para sair daqui?
Não, ninguém pediu. Não é podia sair, não, mas aqui é tanto de segurança. Ai, muito, ai, que eles não tragam. Já tem que fugir.
Bem, nós conseguimos ver ao fundo deste vale uma casa, com os bombeiros a tentar ao fundo apagar as chamas, as labaredas altíssimas, mas bastante complicado. recordo que nós estamos a menos de 500 metros da entrada da vila de Monchique, uma vila que tem sensivelmente entre 8 a 9 habitantes. Uma vila que as autoridades resolveram não evacuar. E nós vamos ter neste momento que sair do local, entraremos em direto assim que for.
Temperatures may have started to ease from their near record highs in Portugal, but fires have raged for a third day in the south of the country. Flames have consumed more than 1,000 hectares of forest in the hilly Monchique area, in the southern Algarve region popular with tourists. Wildfires killed over 100 people in the country's worst such tragedy on record last year. Authorities were quick this time around to evacuate more than 100 people from several villages. This woman said, "We had to leave the dogs behind. Someone should come and take care of all the houses and animals." Spain has also been hit. Flames engulf dry trees and shrubs in and around the southwestern town of San Vicente de Alcantara, where temperatures are hovering around the 43 degrees Celsius mark. Firemen are battling around the clock to get the blaze under control.
В реду крова вода. Otopляют хангар, не робить.
Ovdje ne znam šta je putio.
Circovo Audi dentro. Lele tete. Paisa. Sad će ti izaći.
Drugi avgust se Tilija Vašar. Evo narode Vašar.
Bako, ja bih ti savjetovao da se pomeriš odatle, sve više izlazi ako ne gaziš daske.
Ali dakle i ovamo ulazi malo.
Ovo iz Ćoška ti ulazi.
Tu kroz prav?
Ne, ovamo. Sve to.
To mama ima da bude veselo.
Federal aid and firefighters from across the globe are headed to Northern California this week to help battle the California fires. The White House has just approved a disaster declaration for Shasta County, where the Carr Fire continues to burn through homes and property. At the same time, the Mendocino complex fire has exploded to nearly 230,000 acres. And the Ferguson fire near Yosemite has claimed another life. Reporter Kim Hutcherson has more.
He died protecting people he never met, their homes, their most cherished possessions.
A moving tribute to the latest victim of the more than 17 monstrous fires blazing out of control in California. Captain Brian Hughes was part of an elite group of hotshots battling the Ferguson fire near Yosemite. This weekend, that 3-week-old fire moved into the park, forcing rangers and employees to evacuate during peak season.
We've had fires before, we've had evacuations before, but to have this extended period of just this inversion layer of just hazardous, unbreathable air, it takes its toll.
Meanwhile, north of San Francisco, a massive pair of fires called the Mendocino complex fires have exploded in size.
This has been a challenging and deadly fire season just in the month of July.
Farther north in Shasta County, people near the Carr Fire began returning to their homes. The fire there has killed 7 people and destroyed more than 1,000 structures.
And this has been the largest and most destructive fire in Shasta County history, and I believe about the 6th in California.
On Sunday, the White House approved a disaster declaration for Shasta County, fast-tracking federal aid. Help is also pouring in from all over the world.
We're bringing resources in, as was said, from a number of different states, 2 countries. Firefighters from New Zealand and Australia will be arriving in Reading on Monday.
Kim Hutcherson, KPIX 5.
Shadow, I think we will need to maybe leave and go check out the health center in St. George's. But you see, and that's why I had told Francis, get the bags and then fill.
Okay, that's in front of my door, people. That's the supermarket. It's flooded. The vehicles there are just moving like crazy. That's the post office. I know it's flooded out. Flooded now, but I know it's flooded out. So that is what River Road look like. Okay? I was doing a live, but I got cut off. We don't have current. So I think I have a battery pack that is charged, so I could charge my phone. There goes a barrel. Oh, or a tank. Maybe that's why the gas was smelling all around. There goes some logs, more logs, a lot of more logs. There goes a stroller wheel. Let's hope it wasn't a stroller with a baby.
Ra thằng lúc nào lại đón hai mấy anh em từ
mình di chuyển của cải như con vật thì thóc lúa các kiểu đấy nó cũng vất vả lắm. Cái hôm nay cuộc sống nó cũng hơi khó khăn một tí, cái đường đi lại nó không có, nó thiếu thốn nhiều thứ đấy. Điện đó nó không có, nó cũng khổ lắm.
Công việc là chúng tôi làm hàng đây là không có để mà làm, là không có để người ta cùng đem đến được, không có chỗ phương tiện nào để mang đến, là chúng tôi chỉ có ở nhà là không làm được cái gì cả, là hàng ngày là chỉ có Ăn trong cái chờ đợi mà lại thiệt thòi nhiều quá, lợn thì ngập mất hết rồi, lợn gà chết.
Nước.
It was incredibly hot yesterday in Korea. Seoul set a new record, and a city east of the capital saw the highest temperature in the country since records began. Today could be even hotter. These temperatures are dangerous, so everyone's advised to stay out of the heat and make sure to drink plenty of water. Won Jung-hwan has the latest.
Almost the entire country is under a heat wave warning, and the temperature in the capital city soared to its highest in 111 years. Seoul's temperature hit 39.6 Celsius Wednesday, breaking the previous heat record of 38.4 set in July 1994.
I came out to play with my children because it's too hot to stay at home. The record-breaking heat is making everyone very tired.
According to meteorologists, high atmospheric pressure from Tibet and prolonged dryness have contributed to the extremely hot weather. And warm, dry air blown down from the eastern Tibet mountains has pushed up temperatures in the western and inland region, including the capital. The nights aren't much cooler either, with some parts of the country experiencing super tropical nights, where the temperature stays above 30 degrees Celsius all night.
In the killer heat wave we've had in the past couple of weeks, more than half of South Korea's weather stations saw the highest temperatures they've ever recorded, some over 40 degrees Celsius. The Korea Meteorological Administration says on August 1st, the southeastern city of Busan and the port of Incheon had the hottest day since records began in 1904. Some 26 other weather stations had their highest highs since they started keeping track in 1907. The highest temperature South Korea's ever experienced was in the city of Hongcheon, Gangwon-do province, at 41 degrees. In Seoul, it got up to 39.6, also an all-time high. The heat has led to 35 deaths so far and has caused heat-related symptoms in thousands. Thankfully, today is forecast to be the end of the heat wave, but it'll still get up to the mid-30s.
It's the worst drought in a generation. That's what farmers who live in outback New South Wales are saying, as these fertile plains, part of Australia's food bowl, see their lowest rainfall in decades.
I find droughts a little bit like cancer. It sort of eats away at you. It just gets drier and drier and more severe and more severe.
It's a story that's borne out in the numbers. According to Australia's Weather Bureau, this year saw the second hottest summer ever recorded. But for these farmers, it's now beyond numbers, as many say they've resorted to praying for conditions to improve.
For us, the only way that we can get life any better is for God to send us some rain. And no other business depends on the Mother Nature. We do.
This region around the town of Grenada is seeing its worst rainfall since the end of World War II. And some say if it doesn't rain by the end of this year, It will make for the worst dry spell in a century. Some families who've worked on this land for generations told Reuters there is so little grass left, they've resorted to chopping limbs off trees to feed their stock.
When the water runs out, we'll just have to sell everything, and that'll be it.
The dry spell has now left over 80% of New South Wales state in drought. And even as people here continue to pray for divine intervention, for now, there's no predicted end in sight.